Welcome back, folks, to CIOs and Bow Ties. Greg Silverman, Chief Investment Officer. On the line, I have Dante Venafro, who is coming to us from the West Coast, and I'd like to thank him for waking up super early to undertake this interview. But Dante, you've got what I call a catbird seat on blockchain AI tech, specifically given your multidisciplinary background. I think you've got a good sense of how use cases can be adopted. So let's be methodical again. Obviously, what the federal government and the state governments are trying to undertake right now is a massive supply chain logistical problem. And I know blockchain lends itself very well to supply chain management. So speak to me a little bit about how you see that aiding the system and how that will moving forward, what blockchain is going to look like in supply chain management.
Absolutely. Okay, so I have a perfect example because Walmart was one of the great companies that was presenting at the White House press conferences. And at the time that I was still at Oracle, the man in charge of their food supply chain and their food safety initiatives, his name was Frank Yanis. And so I saw him speaking at MIT about how Walmart was using IBM blockchain to do all of that. And so obviously I wanted to poach them and bring them over to Oracle. And even though it didn't work, I could tell you the stories when we finally got him on the call. And by the way, he now runs the FDA. His name's Frank Yanis. He said that they had a board meeting and someone walked in and put a mango on the table in the Walmart board meeting. And they said, I want someone here to tell me what farm this mango came from. And it took them 6.5 days to tell this man where that mango came from. And in the most simplest terms, because I feel like when you say something simply, that's a better reflection of true understanding than if I talked to you about nodes and got more complicated. Yeah. After implementing a supply chain blockchain use case, they were able to, within 30 seconds, tell you where the mango came from just because of the real-time transparent nature of the technology. And so that's going to be very important for the supply chain regarding masks, gloves, swabs, and these things that seem to be in a bit of confusion.
Got it. Just for my clarification, is that in place currently today or not?
Currently, all dark leafy greens, among other things, in Walmart's supply chain are on a blockchain. It's Hyperledger Fabric, but unfortunately for me, it was IBM. That was an IBM rather than Oracle.
Okay, interesting. What about gloves and respirators and that kind of stuff for the immediate emergency?
So what's interesting about that is there's actually current articles out in the bills yesterday that call for that. So they're saying we want these things on a blockchain, but to my understanding, and I could be wrong, they're not yet, but it's actually being asked for in laws that are still held up in Congress. So if you were to Google like Congress, Corona, wanting blockchain in the supply chain of the supplies, you could see the articles pop up. So it's in the works now, to my knowledge.
Okay. So basically, big companies like IBM and Oracle stand to be huge recipients, I guess, of this this pending bill if they were to adopt a real strong blockchain approach, right?
Yeah, I would say it depends on the vendors that each of these companies choose. And so, Thermo Fisher versus Gilead versus Abbott versus whoever it may be, they may use different providers, but no matter who they use, SAP also has a blockchain. They may use Amazon that also has a blockchain, and they're doing interesting things with Kaleido and Microsoft itself.
How does that affect your ecosystem of smaller startups, though? Are they going to get an opportunity to play?
I really don't think so. I think that largely this is going to be handled by the big guys. At least the current pandemic. I think the current pandemic, unfortunately, is going to be taken over by the big guys that everyone can trust. But I'd still think that there's room for smaller players, blockchain players, to get involved, but it's not going to have an impact in a supply chain use case, in my opinion. Okay. I've seen some interesting data visualization and tracking tools, but nothing that's like being employed by some of the largest suppliers, some of the largest. Yeah.
Got it. All right, let's turn the conversation back to cryptocurrency, because you did touch on it in part one. Look, I am a self-ascribed gold bug. I'll just get that out there. Originally from South Africa, I say I got gold running through my veins as a joke. But be that as it may, many people tout crypto as the digital gold. And I know it's a broad sweeping statement, but let's just, leave it at that. Now, both gold and crypto has not performed super well initially during this sell-off period. And, crypto to a degree has been disappointing as an uncorrelated asset class. I realize it's coming back now, as is the gold price. As we speak, I think it's up pretty strong. Given probably, again, my words, not fact, probably this introduction of a massive stimulus, massive, dilution printing of money. What's your take on crypto as it's given this kind of current use case that we're looking at it?
Well, what's interesting? I'm going to go on a very, very brief tangent that comes back. And so there's actually an equation in macroeconomics that if M is the money supply and V is the velocity of money, it equals PQ. So MV equals PQ. P is the general price level, and Q is the output. And so what's interesting is V is not constant. So during a crisis like this, if there's a demand for holding liquid assets like cash, people aren't going to be spending as much, and then the people that would have received their spend won't be spending as much. And so theoretically, if V is slowing down, you have to increase M, right, to balance the equation.
Yep.
And so that's for people who support the idea of a Federal Reserve that's independent, that can print things in situations and crises when V slows down. But on the other hand, I think that this is definitely Bitcoin's moment. And if Bitcoin can't shine in this moment, then I think folks may lose a lot of faith in it. And there's other critiques as well. I've heard critiques that it's largely owned by very few people, right? And so how can it be this great new financial system if it's similar to the current financial system where only a few people at the very top own over 70, 80, 90% of the entire currency? And then the final critique that I have read is that proof of work, even though all of a large amount of all the mining facilities are done with renewable energy, that doesn't mean that energy couldn't be better spent. That renewable energy could be better spent other ways if there was a more sustainable consensus protocol as opposed to proof of work. And it'll be interesting to see also if there's going to be a new, I suppose Bitcoin 2.0 that can be combining technologies that didn't exist in 2008. Maybe even add in like privacy protocols. And so Bitcoin isn't as transparent, and then ultimately can become like a surveillance system over people who use it. But I do think the world needs an uncorrelated store of value. And so far from everything that I've seen, Bitcoin fits that use case more than any other cryptocurrency I've seen, and it's immaculate conception, despite the fact that it, most of it's owned by not too many people. Its immaculate conception will be hard to repeat, and it'll be interesting to watch how this plays out over the pandemic.
Yeah. Well, just to be clear, my reference here is using, and we'll use Bitcoin because it's the largest crypto out there, but it's Bitcoin as a store of value as opposed to a medium of exchange, just to be clear. Because when I refer to gold, I'm referring to it as a store of value as opposed to a medium of exchange. We're not, paying with little Kruger rands at the store. But point taken. So we'll have to see. And look, the use case is not complete. And at the same time, it hasn't gone away. It hasn't. Bitcoin is still around and still being tracked under this scenario. So I think it bodes well, probably for the future. Let's move on a little bit. I know another one of your areas of expertise is AI and big data, and I've seen a few articles that you've kind of forwarded along regarding the tracking of genomes, the tracking of the spread of the virus using AI and big data. Can you talk to us a little bit about that and some observations you've made?
Yes, what's interesting is it's actually the White House has open sourced a data science project. I can send you the link to it, but they basically called on all AI experts, all data science experts that are building a project that needs to implement the open source data set to use this certain like GitHub repository. And then I've also seen other things spring up, like MIT just yesterday announced an interdisciplinary challenge that anyone can sign up for. People are trying to create apps that can tie into, these larger data sets, so folks know, okay, if you answer these set of questions, therefore you're symptomatic and you need to go to this location, and those APIs will call on that data set. I've read things about folks using medical imaging AI to diagnose folks. And I'm not necessarily, I wouldn't call myself an AI expert, but I work with a team of, these are guys that have high energy physics PhDs from Caltech and Stanford and MIT. And then they've went all the way down the rabbit hole on machine learning algorithms, computer vision, natural language processing algorithms. And there's just so many interesting things going on in that area that
can you point to a few use cases there which has actually been helpful in this fight against COVID?
So AI and COVID-19?
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned medical imaging.
Yes. Yep. So I can read you one really interesting example actually that's going on that actually China is using. Let me get my notes on it quickly. Okay, here we go. So China's using AI and medical imaging to speed up the diagnosis. And I can even name drop the companies that are doing it that I've been following. Ping An Smart Healthcare, which is under Ping An Insurance Group in China. And remember, you got to watch what China's doing, because who is the CDC and the HHS and everybody following? They're actually following the containment and diagnosis examples set by the Asian countries, because they're looking at the Asian countries. How do they flatten the curve? So
ahead in the curve, yeah. Yep.
Right? And so I think these are some interesting people to look at. Now, mind you, 21 phones disappeared off the face of their networks. That's another thing, but no conspiracies on this call. So I'll just go into what they're using. But they're using a smart image reading system that in 15 seconds, above 90% accuracy, administered by a radiologist can read CT images of patients that have contracted COVID-19 and, like I said, accurately predict above 90% based on your CT images that we fed through computer vision algorithms. We know you have it, and so I suppose that whatever the disease is doing to our lungs, it's visible. It's visible, and the patterns can be learned through these models. And I'll give a couple more examples. We have beyond Ping An, Beijing Intervision technology. Same thing. They have CT pneumonia software that can detect lesions and the shape and the density, and then compare the changes in the lesions to CT images, and within 10 seconds, be able to diagnose someone with COVID. Very, very interesting. And I think they have above 95% accuracy.
All right, Dante, let me stop you there, if I may. I'm going to stop you there. I want to take a short break. When we come back, I want to hear about some of these other use cases. But I'm also interested to know if this technology is out there and it's so effective, why it's not being distributed so widely, why we can't go get a lung scan. So, folks, and Dante, if you just bear with us for 1 second, just hang back, and we'll be right back after a short break.